Yeah, it's a 7-acre sustainability education center, and it's a very special piece of land because it's an old family farm surrounded by a 700-acre state park forest. And it's in the city of Portland, in city limits, but pretty isolated in its own little world. And today is actually the 4-year anniversary of the birth of the farm. And woo, good job, everyone! Yes, high five. It's really significant how we came to be, because that's who we are, which is a real combination of many different perspectives on sustainability. I think one of how we define sustainability is learning to share and to be part of a network, to see ourselves not as isolated, because we can't do it alone in any way, any level of whatever sustainability means. So the farm is a place for research and development, for exploring with a really amazing place, exploring gardening and building and community and wildness and art and many different aspects, and really bringing together a lot of different groups. So I see the farm as a forum, as a place for lots of different groups, people, and ideas to come. And our job as the stewards of the farm, whoever is volunteering at that time, our job, I think, is to learn how to weave together the many different interests and uses of the land to make it a very dense place. A lot of activity, a lot of different points of view and way of connecting. But the theme is connecting based on community and nature. And so it's a very organic feeling place. It's very inspiring to a lot of people because it's co-created. It's DIY in a lot of ways, and in almost all ways. And it's really so integrated with the natural environment. A year and a half later, I think, I took a year off and I went and I traveled around the world, and mostly in Africa. And that travel, I called it Journey de Jenny, and the travel was really guided by a desire to find successful grassroots projects that were rippling horizontally and or vertically. But I have just, from my experiences at the farm and city repair, both of those were places where I could be in the middle of a lot of people and groups, and I started observing a lot of redundant efforts and stuck places just in group dynamics and human nature and the repetitive, everyone's starting up their new nonprofit because they have this cool new idea without really building on what already exists. So I took a year off to stop and observe and listen. And listen actively, i.e. engaging with groups that I found very interesting. And so, yeah, I threaded my year just by witnessing and learning and sharing back to people that grew to a number of about 700 or 800 people on my email list and with a blog. So it was this feedback. I'd be kind of reporting for my community and sharing it out.
Yeah, well, you said you were looking for successful grassroots organizations. Like, why successful and why grassroots? I mean, it seems like pretty good ideas to me, but why did you choose to seek out those?
I really believe in grassroots, and to me that could be vague. It means community driven by people that are going to be affected by those decisions, and I just think that's such a beautiful concept. Intuitively, it just feels so right and so good. Yeah. And it's what works. Jane Jacobs, one of my heroes, a grandmother of human-centered urban planning, I got to meet her a year or two before she passed away, and she said, when an expert designs something, it is sometimes great. And when a community designs something, it is always good. And I think that's pretty right on. People doing things. So that's why I look for grassroots, because I guess you just have to trust the mantras of all the movements around the world that keep talking about we need to be heard and we need to be involved, and I trust that. So I look for grassroots. And successful, what does that mean? I think it means not necessarily that their project or idea continues forever, because I think some projects and groups have a life cycle. It starts and then they've done their work and it's time to transform energy, to compost themselves. But I think to be effective has at this point in time, has some horizontal and vertical aspects. And what I mean by that is horizontal is sharing, building connections and communities and networks and learning from each other, not being isolated. And vertical meaning actually affecting some of the work that we're trying to do, which essentially roots a lot in power and overarching systems and structures that be. So somehow it taps on those structures. Absolutely. I just feel like anything that's homemade. I'm a communitarian, really.
DIY.
Communitarian, yep. Yeah. And I see myself as a bridger, a diplomat of some kind, that I think for a lot of reasons, one of my offerings to this world in this form is that I like to be, I am either accepted or feel comfortable or like to become part of multiple different communities and bring the stories and understandings from one to another and translate in the process or connect. I think that's how I would define myself. That's come out as cross-pollinator.
As a cross-pollinator, right.
Sometimes I think about it as movement diplomat. Sometimes I think about it as just a bridger. But a charismatic person, charisma means to share your gift. And so it doesn't mean someone who's inspiring on the stage with a microphone. A charismatic person means that they're expressing themselves to their full self. And I love that. That's kind of my definition of leadership, is contributing your best self to a group. I think we need leaderful. Yeah. I would say we need everyone to be a leader and to have a deep understanding of what leadership means. So it doesn't mean everyone loud and talking, because that's the mainstream. You know, a leader is someone who's bold and all those things. I think everyone needs to be a leader and to shift roles and to take on different aspects of work, but really to express oneself to the most. So offering whatever skill or gift that you can. And our work, I think, I almost want to say the greatest work of our time is to learn how to work together, is to learn how to draw out those charismatic qualities in each person and weave it together successfully to do something more than we can do alone. And that is complicated and really interesting. I called it Great Transition. There's lots of names for it. But the idea that there's a lot of people in that gray area of starting to wake up and look around and see that things aren't quite right, and to, you know, just that spark of something questioning, to that starting to try and examine our lives and move into a healthier way and not knowing how and where and looking around and just getting stuck, to people that are more organized and going and finding each other and having a hard time still. There's this range of people, this continuum. There are so many people in that middle, and I think I see a really cutting edge area for people to be thinking about is how to support people in that transition. And I really see the word support being key, because there's such emotional stuff that comes along with that. Like, we need a lot of transition therapy. You know, that big doesn't mean secure and power, and, you know, big doesn't mean that you're a respected person in society. That, you know, small is beautiful. that to transform scarcity into abundance and fear, and to address things like hopelessness and despair, and those things are real. And so there's this whole realm of, I see this world needing us in this transition needing a lot more emotional support, as well as technological support, meaning I think we already have a lot of technology that we need, but the trick is how to make it useful, how to apply it, how to retrofit the society, the shells that we have, like in houses and buildings. How do we retrofit what we have? We don't need to rip it all down and start over, maybe in some cases, but that's really resource intensive very often. So how